class bullies mocked the human until their Earth field trip best HFY stories. It was just another day in the Advanced Intergalactic Academy, where beings from countless worlds attended classes to learn about the wonders of the universe. The students, a mix of alien species and humans, sat in their usual seats, chatting and waiting for their instructor to begin the day's lesson. The human student, Derek, sat near the back of the room, trying to stay out of sight. He had always been the odd one out, just one human in a sea of superior alien beings. And to make matters worse, he was often the target of the class bullies. These weren't just your average schoolyard bullies, they were students from some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, from species that could control time, manipulate gravity, and communicate across vast distances without even speaking. To them, humans were a curiosity, a species that had once been nearly extinct before they managed to claw their way into space. Derek had learned to take it all in stride. He kept his head down, did his work, and tried to avoid the teasing. But the bullies, led by Thor, a massive and intimidating alien from the Athar Empire, never seemed to tire of mocking him. "What's it like to be so weak?" Thor sneered one day, his eyes narrowing as he loomed over Derek. "Do you need a helmet to breathe on your own planet? Or do you just choke on the air?" The rest of the class snickered. Derek clenched his fists, but said nothing. He had heard it all before. "Come on, Derek." Zivra, a slender, telepathic alien from the Vzan race, chimed in, her voice echoing in his mind. "Tell us how you humans survived long enough to make it off that little rock of yours. Was it sheer luck? Or did you just happen to stumble into space travel by accident?" The laughter grew louder as Derek gritted his teeth, but still, he said nothing. They all thought they were so superior, with their advanced abilities and ancient civilizations. It was hard for Derek to argue with them, especially when he felt like the last of his kind. The instructor, a being of immense power from the Zlar Consortium, entered the room and immediately silenced the class with a single glance. "Settle down, students. Today, we are going on a field trip. You will be visiting Earth." The announcement sent a ripple of excitement through the class. Earth, the cradle of human civilization. For centuries, it had been a place of great interest to the galaxy's elite, but not many had actually set foot there. It was a planet full of history, but to most, it was a primitive world, nothing more than a footnote in the vast tapestry of the universe. Thor smirked. "A trip to Earth? How quaint. I suppose we'll see how much strength the humans really have." Derek didn't say a word. He was already dreading the trip. He knew how the others would treat him, like an oddity, a curiosity. The field trip was set for a few days later. When the group arrived on Earth, they were greeted by the sprawling cities, towering skyscrapers, and the noise of bustling streets. It was a world that had risen from humble beginnings to become a technological powerhouse. But to the students, it was still a place of intrigue. They began their tour at the Great Wall of China, marveling at its vastness. Thor, always eager to show off, strutted around with his superior posture, effortlessly jumping from one side to the other as the others looked on in awe. "You see," Thor boasted, "this is nothing. We have floating cities on Athar. We don't need to climb walls when we can just float above them." But the group was soon distracted when they visited the memorials of Earth's ancient conflicts. The memorials spoke of a world that had faced devastation, wars, plagues, famine, but had risen from the ashes each time. Derek couldn't help but notice the looks on the students' faces as they read the plaques and watched the holographic recreations of Earth's history. "They fought wars among themselves for control of the planet," Zivra said, her voice tinged with disbelief, "and yet they still made it to the stars?" Derek saw the curiosity in her eyes, the seeds of doubt taking root. The class continued their tour to a massive space launch facility, where they observed the launch of a new spacecraft bound for Mars. The students, used to technologies far beyond what Earth could offer, found themselves staring in awe as the massive rocket soared into the sky, leaving a trail of fire and smoke behind it. "I've never seen anything like this," said Jarek, a young alien from the Thar species, his voice filled with awe. "Their technology is so primitive, but they still managed to send something into space." Derek smiled to himself. He could see the realization dawning on them. The humans were not just a species of weaklings. They were survivors, innovators, and dreamers. They had built an entire civilization from the ground up, faced unimaginable odds, and still pushed forward. As the trip came to an end, the class stood at the edge of a forest, looking out over the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun set over the mountains. Thor, who had been the loudest in his mockery of humans, stood in stunned silence, his arrogance momentarily replaced by a sense of humility. "I never understood," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else, "how a species that barely survived for centuries managed to accomplish so much." Zivra was the first to speak. "I think we underestimated them. The humans, they don't just survive, they adapt, they innovate, and they thrive." Derek stood quietly among them, his heart swelling with pride. He had always known what humanity was capable of, but now, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to see it too. For the first time since he had entered the academy, Derek felt truly seen, not as the odd human in the class, but as part of a species that was capable of greatness, a species that had made it to the stars not through luck, but through sheer determination, resilience, and the belief that anything was possible. And for the bullies who had mocked him, well, they now understood something he had always known: humanity was not to be underestimated. The lesson was clear: humanity might have started with nothing, but we built everything. The next day, when the class returned to their academy, the mood was different. The usual banter and teasing were gone. There was an unspoken respect in the air, a shift that Derek couldn't help but notice. Thor, once the most vocal of the bullies, kept his distance. Even Zivra, with her telepathic abilities, seemed to be reflecting on what she had witnessed on Earth. In class, as the instructor began the day's lesson, Derek could feel the subtle change. The other students weren't glaring at him or making snide remarks anymore. It was as if they had seen something in humanity that they hadn't known existed before, something that made them reconsider their assumptions. The instructor, as always, spoke with authority and grace. "Now that you've seen Earth's history, let's discuss what makes a civilization truly great. Is it the size of their empire, the technology they wield, or is it something more intrinsic, their ability to endure, to rise above adversity, and to create from nothing?" Derek sat up straighter, the words resonating with him. The instructor's gaze shifted across the room, landing briefly on Derek before continuing. "In the case of humanity, what makes them unique isn't just their ability to survive, it's their unwavering determination. They don't give up, even when the odds are stacked against them. That is the mark of a truly advanced civilization." The class fell into a thoughtful silence. After the lesson, as the students filed out of the room, Thor approached Derek. The imposing alien looked down at him, his usual cocky demeanor replaced with something else, perhaps awe, perhaps even humility. "You were right," Thor said, his voice surprisingly gentle. I underestimated you. Your people, they have a kind of strength I never understood before. I thought Earth was just a primitive world, but I was wrong. The humans, they're not just survivors, they're pioneers." Derek met his gaze, trying to hide the surprise he felt. He had never expected Thor, or any of the others, to admit such a thing. "It's all right," Derek said simply. "We've had a long journey to get where we are, but we're just getting started." The words felt more powerful than Derek had anticipated. As the other students drifted around him, murmurs of admiration echoed through the room. He realized then that humanity's potential wasn't just about technology or space travel. It was about the human spirit, an unyielding drive to keep moving forward, no matter how difficult the path. Weeks went by, and Derek found that the atmosphere in the academy had changed. The students from other species no longer looked at him as the odd human in the back of the room. There were no more jokes at his expense, no more whispers behind his back. Instead, there was an understanding that humanity was no longer just a species trying to keep up. It was a species that had its own place among the stars, one earned through resilience and determination. It wasn't just Thor who had changed his view. Many of the other students did as well. Zivra, who had once mocked humanity for its supposed backwardness, now sought Derek out after class to discuss human achievements. She was fascinated by Earth's art, its history, and its innovations. She even asked Derek to help her understand human philosophy, something she had always thought was trivial but now found deeply intriguing. And it wasn't just about intellect, there was something else. During a class project, where the students had to simulate a planetary crisis and create solutions. Derek's group found themselves in a tough spot. Their resources were running out, and it seemed like there was no clear way to save the colony they were tasked with protecting. It was Derek who suggested a solution, using human ingenuity to recycle and repurpose materials, a method Earth had used in times of scarcity. The idea was met with skepticism at first, but when the simulation played out, Derek's solution saved the colony, and his classmates began to look at him differently. "You humans," Jarrick said, grinning after the project was completed, "you don't just think outside the box, you reinvent the box entirely." Derek chuckled, shaking his head. "Sometimes, the simplest solutions are the best." And slowly, one day at a time, Derek's classmates began to see that Earth wasn't just a place for study and fascination. It was a place that had birthed a species capable of overcoming any obstacle, creating anything from nothing, and finding solutions where others saw only dead ends. One evening, as the Academy's vast halls grew quiet and the stars glimmered outside the windows, Derek found himself alone in the common room. As he stared out at the expanse of space, he couldn't help but think about how far humanity had come. He thought about the bullies, the ridicule, the doubts, but he also thought about the future, about how humanity's story was just beginning to unfold among the stars. As the door behind him opened, Thor stepped in, his usual posture no longer brimming with arrogance, but rather with a quiet respect. "You were right," Thor said again, his voice sincere. "Humanity is destined for greatness, not because of your technology or your wars, but because of your spirit. It's something we'll have to learn to match if we're ever to be truly advanced." Derek turned around, smiling. "Maybe, but I think the universe is big enough for all of us to find our own greatness." And with that, Derek knew one thing for certain: the future wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. Humanity had proven it. Now, it was time for everyone else to see it too. The bullies had mocked him, but now they had learned the greatest lesson of all: never underestimate the heart of a human. It was the strength that would carry them across galaxies, into the unknown future, and beyond. As weeks turned into months, Derek's reputation at the Academy continued to evolve. What had once been a strange, sometimes isolating experience had turned into a platform for mutual respect. His classmates, the ones who had once mocked and belittled him, now sought his opinions on matters that extended far beyond the limits of Earth. He had become a quiet ambassador for humanity, teaching not just about Earth's history and technology but about the core of what made humans who they were. One day, during a particularly grueling advanced problem-solving exercise, something shifted again. The class was asked to solve a planetary crisis scenario. An asteroid was on a collision course with a highly populated world, and there was only one chance to divert it. The problem seemed straightforward at first: use a combination of advanced technology and spaceflight knowledge to save the planet. But then, as the simulation progressed, it became clear that they had underestimated the severity of the crisis. The asteroid was much larger than anticipated, and their technology wasn't enough. Panic began to ripple through the class. Thor, now one of Derek's most unexpected allies, shouted in frustration, "We can't stop it. Our technology isn't advanced enough. We need more time." But Derek, remembering a lesson he'd learned during his time on Earth, remained calm. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "We might not have more time, but we can still save them. Let's think differently." His classmates turned to him, unsure of what he meant, but Derek, drawing on the history of humanity's resourcefulness in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, spoke with the kind of authority that could only come from someone who truly understood their species' resilience. "On Earth, we had a saying: when you're faced with a problem, sometimes the best solution is the one that requires you to break every rule you've ever learned. We've been thinking like aliens, using technology as the only solution. But humans find a way when there's no time left. We don't rely solely on technology. We rely on our instincts, our will to survive. Maybe it's time we stopped thinking like we always have." He suggested using a combination of ingenuity and desperation, drawing from Earth's history where last-minute solutions had saved entire populations. His idea was radical, using a more unpredictable approach that involved both a high-risk maneuver involving the asteroid's trajectory and a quick collaboration between all their ships, pushing technology and willpower to the limits. The other students hesitated, but Derek's certainty was contagious. Together, they worked tirelessly, improvising the risky plan. The asteroid was diverted at the last possible moment, but it was only through sheer creativity, collaboration, and the human spirit that it was possible. As the simulation ended, Derek's classmates were silent. They had never seen such a creative and unconventional solution. Thor, who had once scoffed at Derek's people, was the first to speak. "That was brilliant. I can't believe that actually worked. You saved them, Derek. I never thought I'd see a time when humans would show us how it's done." Derek smiled, though he was exhausted from the effort. "Sometimes, you need to think outside the box. Sometimes you just need to make a new box." Zivra, who had once considered human emotions trivial, looked at Derek with new understanding. "You weren't just saving a planet. You were saving the people. That's the heart of what makes humanity different. You don't just solve problems for the sake of solving them. You solve them because you care." Derek nodded. "That's the human way. It's not just about technology or strategy, it's about the people you're saving." As the academy year drew to a close, the students had changed. The bullies who once mocked Derek now approached him as an equal. Thor, Zivra, Jarek, and the others had learned something invaluable on their field trip to Earth. Humanity wasn't just a species to be mocked or looked down upon. They were an essential part of the universe's ongoing story. They had a place among the stars, not because of their technology or their conquests, but because of their unwavering ability to adapt and persevere. And Derek, who had once felt like an outsider, now stood as a beacon of humanity's potential. When the time came for him to present his final project for the year, he didn't hesitate to tell his classmates what had truly been the driving force behind human progress. The universe isn't just a place of vast distances and civilizations. It's a place where you can find your purpose, your meaning, and your place if you never give up. That's what humanity taught me. Even in the darkest of times, we push forward, and I know that if we keep doing that, we'll eventually find our way." The class erupted into applause, not out of obligation but out of genuine respect for the lesson Derek had imparted. As the academy year came to an end, the students prepared for their next great adventure. Wherever it might take them, they would explore the stars, push the boundaries of their knowledge, and face new challenges. But now, they would carry with them the lesson they had learned from a species that had once been underestimated and ridiculed. Never underestimate the strength of the human spirit. The universe had witnessed humanity's greatness, and it would not forget. Derek left the academy that day with his head held high, no longer the lone human among a crowd of superior beings. He had shown them that humans weren't just a species that had survived, they were a species that had earned their place in the stars, not by relying solely on technology, but by tapping into something far deeper, the unyielding determination to rise, to adapt, and to thrive. And as Derek gazed out at the cosmos, he knew that humanity's journey had only just begun. They were no longer a curiosity, they were a force to be reckoned with. The months following Derek's successful year at the academy were filled with new opportunities. His story had spread across the galaxy, and humanity's reputation as a resilient, adaptable species had firmly taken root. While Derek had once been an isolated figure among his peers, he was now invited to speak at intergalactic summits, to represent the unique strength of humanity. But despite all the attention, Derek remained humble, always attributing humanity's success to something greater than any individual, the collective will of his people. One day, a strange message arrived at the academy. It was encrypted with a level of security that only a handful of beings in the galaxy could decipher. The message came from an ancient, mysterious race known as the Thale, a species so old that their existence was considered a legend by most. The Thale had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations and had long since withdrawn from the affairs of younger species. Their message was simple: they wanted humanity's help. The council convened quickly, and Derek was invited to join the discussions. The Thale had identified a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered before. A massive entity, known as the Unmaker, had appeared in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, consuming entire star systems and leaving nothing but darkness in its wake. The Thale, for all their wisdom and power, were powerless against such a force. They had asked for humanity's help, believing that the one thing they could not understand was exactly what made humanity unique: its unpredictable, ingenious methods. We've watched your people for a while now. The Thale ambassador, an ethereal being of shifting light, spoke to the council. We've seen you rise from the ashes of your own wars, from near extinction, and yet you thrive. You approach problems from angles that we do not even consider. The Unmaker is a force unlike any we have faced before, but we believe humanity, with your relentless determination, may hold the key to stopping it. The room fell silent. Derek was taken aback. A part of him wanted to decline. This was not the kind of thing Earth had ever faced before. But he also knew that humanity had always risen to challenges greater than themselves. If anyone could stop the Unmaker, it was the human spirit. The other council members, including Thor, Zivra, and Jarek, stood in quiet contemplation. Thor, the once ruthless bully turned ally, was the first to speak. I think it's time we show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of, Thor said. We've underestimated you long enough. If anyone can find a way to stop this thing, it's you. Derek nodded, his heart pounding. Then we do this together. No one species can do this alone, but if we combine everything we know, maybe we can make a difference. For the next few weeks, the humans and their allies worked together to study the Unmaker. The Thale provided data, ancient records, and arcane knowledge about the entity, while Derek and the rest of the Academy's brightest minds, alien and human alike, sought to analyze it. The Unmaker didn't seem to follow any logic they understood. It didn't rely on conventional weaponry or known forms of attack. It simply consumed. The scientists and strategists were stumped. Then, one evening, as Derek was poring over the data in the Academy's library, a sudden realization hit him. He thought back to something his instructor had once said during his first year at the Academy: when you encounter the unknown, don't look for what you can't understand, look for what you can. Humanity had faced extinction before, in ways no other species could understand. They had endured the collapse of civilizations, plagues, and wars, but through it all, they had rebuilt. They hadn't just reacted to challenges, they had adapted. That was the key: adaptation. Derek rushed to the council room, where the alien leaders were deep in discussion. We're approaching this the wrong way, he said, breathless. We're trying to understand the Unmaker by looking at it through the lens of our current technology. But we need to think about it differently. The Unmaker doesn't just consume, it adapts. It's like an organism, evolving as it moves, learning from every planet it consumes. If we try to stop it with conventional weapons or tactics, we'll fail. We need to think about how humanity adapts in the face of danger. The council fell silent again, this time not out of confusion but out of awe. Derek was right, humanity's greatest strength had never been in its technology or armies. It was in its ability to adapt. All right, Thor said with a grin. We'll need every species to contribute, but this time, let's think like humans. Let's take what works, discard what doesn't, and evolve our strategy as we go. The plan was risky, but it was their only hope. The key to defeating the Unmaker would be to lure it into a trap that would evolve as they learned more about the entity. Humanity's strategy involved using small, seemingly insignificant resources, old technologies, ancient weaponry, even methods long abandoned by the more advanced civilizations. They would adapt and improvise on the fly, keeping the Unmaker off balance and forcing it into a battle of wits and evolution. For the first time in history, a coalition of species from across the galaxy would fight not with sheer might, but with ingenuity and relentless adaptation. As the battle approached, Derek felt a deep sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about saving one world or one species. This was about showing the universe what humanity stood for. They had come from nothing, survived wars and extinction, and now they were about to prove that they could face an enemy far beyond anything they had ever imagined. The Unmaker arrived. The final battle began. 4 hours. The battle raged across the stars. At first, the Unmaker consumed planet after planet, its vast and unknowable power threatening to engulf everything in its path. But as Derek and his allies adapted their tactics, the entity's momentum slowed. With each new phase, they introduced new strategies, technologies, and traps that kept the Unmaker off balance. Derek and the human fleet performed maneuvers that no one could have predicted, using human ingenuity to turn the tide. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Unmaker's defenses collapsed. The entity's adaptability had been its strength, But humanity had outlasted it. It was forced into a deadlock, its ability to evolve halted by the relentless wave of tactics humanity had unleashed. The Unmaker was no more. In the aftermath, the galaxy was forever changed. The Thale, once the observers of galactic history, marveled at humanity's achievement. Derek's name was known across the stars, but he remained grounded, knowing that it was not his victory, it was a victory for all of humanity. The other species in the galaxy had witnessed humanity's power, not in technology, not in sheer strength, but in the resilience and adaptability that had defined their entire history. And Derek, standing among his fellow humans and allies, knew one thing with absolute certainty: humanity's journey was just beginning. They had proven that they could not only survive in the vast universe, they could shape it, adapt to it, and thrive. The stars were now open to them all. Months passed, and the victory over the Unmaker became a turning point in the galaxy's history. The once mysterious and distant Thale, having witnessed humanity's strength firsthand, invited Derek and a select group of human representatives to join the Galactic Accord, a coalition of species dedicated to maintaining peace and advancing knowledge across the stars. Humanity's place among the stars was now assured, no longer seen as a species struggling to catch up with the more advanced races. Humanity was recognized as a force of nature in its own right. The ability to adapt, to think creatively in the face of impossible odds, had set them apart in ways no one could have predicted. On the eve of humanity's formal induction into the Galactic Accord, Derek stood before a vast assembly of diplomats, military leaders, and scholars from hundreds of different species. He had been asked to speak on behalf of his people, to share the lesson humanity had learned over centuries of hardship and triumph. As he stepped onto the stage, the bright lights of the Galactic Hall illuminated him. Hundreds of eyes from across the galaxy turned to him, waiting for the words of the human representative. Derek had faced mockery, disdain, and rejection in the past, but now, he felt only pride. He had seen the incredible journey humanity had undergone, and now he was ready to share that story with those who had once doubted his species. He cleared his throat and began, his voice calm but resolute. "We have all faced challenges in our lives," he started, addressing the vast audience. "Some of us have faced war, extinction, or the collapse of everything we knew. But no matter how hard we fall, the defining trait of humanity has always been our ability to get back up, to learn, and to adapt. We don't have the longest history among the stars, but we've made up for that with something we've always had in abundance: hope." Derek paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. Humanity doesn't just survive. We create. We create solutions when there seems to be none. We build communities when we have nothing. And we fight for each other when everything seems lost. When we encountered the Unmaker, we didn't have the most advanced weapons or the grandest fleets. What we had was each other, and the unshakable belief that no matter what, we would find a way. His eyes scanned the room. The Thale, once so distant and unapproachable, nodded in quiet approval. Thor, standing nearby with Zivra and Jarrik, wore an expression of deep respect. Derek knew that he wasn't just speaking to them, he was speaking for humanity, for every human who had ever faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. "We are a species of survivors," Derek continued, "but we are also dreamers, builders, and explorers. The universe is vast and full of dangers, but it's also full of opportunities that we, as humans, will never stop seeking. We have learned that the greatest strength is not in our technology, but in the way we adapt. In the way we refuse to be bound by the limitations others place on us." There was a hushed silence, and then, to Derek's surprise, the audience erupted into applause. It wasn't just the sound of politeness, it was genuine admiration. The following days saw humanity formally join the Galactic Accord, and the effects were immediate. For the first time, other species looked at Earth not as a place of primitive beginnings, but as a key player in the future of the galaxy. Humanity was invited to collaborate on major research projects, to take part in peacekeeping missions, and to contribute their unique perspective to the advancement of intergalactic relations. Derek continued his studies at the academy, but now, he was no longer just a student. He had become a mentor, guiding younger humans through the challenges of living in an intergalactic community. His name became synonymous with humanity's rise from obscurity to prominence, and he was often sought for advice on everything from diplomacy to scientific collaboration. Thor, once a bully, had become one of Derek's closest allies. They often spent long hours discussing strategy, technology, and philosophy, and Derek could see the change in Thor. The once arrogant alien had come to truly respect humanity, and Derek knew that Thor's transformation was symbolic of a larger shift happening across the galaxy. But the universe, as vast as it was, still held many mysteries and dangers. Humanity's role in the galaxy was far from guaranteed, and new challenges loomed on the horizon. One such challenge came in the form of a new threat, a rogue faction of aliens calling themselves the Etheric Collective. This group of radicals believed in absolute control over the galaxy, using advanced technology to manipulate and subjugate entire civilizations. They were swift, efficient, and merciless. They believed that only the strongest should rule the stars, and they had made it clear that the Galactic Accord and its ideals of peace were an obstacle to their vision. The Etheric Collective had begun attacking unprotected colonies, and their actions threatened to destabilize the fragile peace the galaxy had enjoyed for centuries. Their forces were formidable, and they had already defeated several fleets from other species. The Galactic Accord was in danger of falling apart. Derek sat in a command center alongside Thor, Zivra, and other representatives of the Accord. The situation was dire. The Etheric Collective had just launched a surprise attack on a peaceful world, and the defensive fleets were struggling to mount a counterattack. As the room hummed with tension, Derek realized that humanity's greatest asset was once again needed, their ability to adapt. But this time, it wasn't just about surviving a crisis, it was about preventing the collapse of everything they had worked for. Isn't there a way to turn the Etheric Collective's own strategies against them? Derek asked, his mind racing through possible solutions. Zivra, the telepathic strategist, nodded slowly. Their strategy is based on overwhelming force and disruption, but we could counter it with agility, move unpredictably, hit hard at their weak points. And we need to turn their own tactics into a weapon, Thor added, his voice low but determined. The collective doesn't expect us to fight in a way they don't understand. We could use that to our advantage. Derek's mind raced. Exactly. If we adapt faster than they can predict, if we force them into an environment where their power is useless, we might just stand a chance. The plan would be risky, and it would require cooperation from every species in the Galactic Accord. But humanity had faced overwhelming odds before, and if they could survive the Unmaker, surely they could outsmart the Etheric Collective. The final battle was upon them. The forces of the Galactic Accord, with humanity at the helm, engaged the Etheric Collective in a desperate struggle. This time, they didn't rely solely on technology or brute strength. Instead, they fought with the one thing that had always set humanity apart, their ability to adapt. In the end, the Etheric Collective was defeated, not by sheer force, but by an unpredictable, ever-evolving strategy that kept them off balance and unable to respond. Derek stood alongside his allies, watching as the last of the Collective's forces retreated into the void. Once again, humanity had proven that they didn't just belong in the galaxy, they were its future. As the years passed, humanity's role in the galaxy continued to grow. Derek, now a seasoned diplomat and strategist, often reflected on the long road Earth had traveled, from the days of mockery and doubt to the current moment, where humanity was seen as a symbol of resilience, adaptation, and unity. Derek knew one thing. Years had passed since humanity's induction into the Galactic Accord, and Derek had grown into a respected figure among the stars. He was no longer just a student or a representative of Earth. He was a symbol of humanity's resilience, adaptability, and the drive to make the impossible possible. With the Etheric Collective defeated and peace seemingly restored, Derek's life had settled into a new rhythm. He spent his days working with other species to advance galactic diplomacy, and his nights were often filled with strategy sessions, scientific collaborations, and debates about the future of the galaxy. But even in the midst of all the progress, Derek knew that the universe had a way of shifting unpredictably. It was during one of these routine sessions that an unexpected transmission came through, sent by an unknown source. The message was encrypted with a complexity that rivaled the most advanced systems in the galaxy. But it contained no words, only a series of fragmented images and sounds. Despite their best efforts, The galactic encryption experts couldn't make sense of it. Derek, always one to embrace a challenge, volunteered to decipher the message. He didn't know why, but something about the complexity of the transmission intrigued him. It was a puzzle, and humanity had always been good at solving puzzles. The images were haunting: a planet in ruins, surrounded by swirling black clouds. Shadows flickered across the surface, and there was a faint echo of something that felt familiar, but beyond reach. As the message continued to unravel, Derek realized with a shock that it wasn't just a transmission, it was a warning. A warning about something ancient. It became clear that whatever had sent the message had been around long before. The Unmaker, or the Etheric Collective, a force from the deep corners of the universe, older than even the Thale. This entity was unlike anything humanity or its allies had ever faced, and the transmission warned of its imminent arrival. Derek, what's going on? Thor's voice broke through Derek's thoughts as he worked tirelessly to decode the last parts of the message. I think I've just uncovered something terrifying, Derek replied, his voice steady but filled with urgency. The transmission is from a race known as the Wraiths, an ancient entity that predates even the oldest galactic civilizations. They are older than the Thale and possess powers that bend the very fabric of space and time. The warning suggests they are awakening, and when they do, they consume entire star systems, not by destruction, but by assimilation. Zivra, who had joined the conversation, spoke up with concern. Assimilation? Like the Etheric Collective? No, Derek said, shaking his head. Not like the Collective. The Wraiths don't just conquer. They reshape worlds, bending reality and altering everything to their will. They absorb the essence of every living thing they encounter, transforming them into something else entirely. It's not just about survival. It's about altering the very nature of existence itself. The implications of what Derek had uncovered were grave. If the Wraiths truly were returning, it would mean the end of everything the galaxy had worked so hard to build. It wasn't just a threat to one world or species. It was a threat to the very structure of reality as everyone knew it. With the weight of this new knowledge, the members of the Galactic Accord convened once more. This time, however, there was no debate about whether humanity would play a role in stopping the Wraiths. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do in the face of impossible odds, and there was no question that humanity would lead the charge against this new threat. Derek, alongside his closest allies, Thor, Zivra, Jarek, and others, began formulating a plan to face the Wraiths. This enemy would require every tool at their disposal, not just brute force but creative thinking and unparalleled adaptability. To face the Wraiths, Derek began in a meeting with the top military and diplomatic leaders of the galaxy. We need to understand that the traditional ways of fighting won't work. The Wraiths aren't an enemy we can defeat with firepower alone. We'll have to outthink them, outadapt them. We'll need to tap into every species' strength, and we need to make it clear that we will not be assimilated. Thor added, his tone unwavering. If we are going to stand a chance, we must use everything humanity has learned in past battles, be it from the Unmaker, the Etheric Collective, or even from the quiet moments of peace we've enjoyed. The Wraiths will not win if we refuse to let them. Derek smiled slightly, feeling the unity of his allies. It was a sentiment he had always believed in, the strength of teamwork, the collective will to overcome. The battle began soon after, though it was unlike any humanity or the Galactic Accord had ever faced. The Wraiths' ships that defied known physics, slipped into existence with terrifying speed. They were not beings of flesh and bone, but creatures woven from the fabric of the universe itself. Their ships appeared as ripples in space-time, their forms constantly shifting as if they didn't belong in the universe. Every world they passed was altered, twisted, and bent out of shape. Its inhabitants either consumed or transformed into part of the Wraiths' collective consciousness. Entire star systems were erased in moments, their existence rewritten to fit into the Wraiths' dark vision. Humanity's forces, though not as technologically advanced as some, fought with a ferocity and creativity that kept the Wraiths guessing. Derek was in constant contact with his allies, coordinating strategies and advising how to outmaneuver their shifting enemies. However, despite their best efforts, the Wraiths continued to press forward. The Accord was losing ground. At the heart of it, Derek came to a grim realization. The Wraiths had no weaknesses, they adapted too quickly, absorbed knowledge too easily. They couldn't be outpowered, outnumbered, or outmaneuvered. There was only one chance: to fight on their terms. Drawing on humanity's most creative and desperate moments, Derek proposed a final, risky plan. They would infiltrate the Wraith's deepest stronghold, using their willingness to adapt and change as the very weapon they needed. They would have to fight the Wraiths on their home turf, blending into their reality and using the Wraith's own powers against them. The mission was hazardous. The forces involved would need to infiltrate the heart of the Wraith's domain, a place where space and time could no longer be trusted. But if they succeeded, they could sever the Wraith's connection to the very fabric of existence, sending them back into the void from which they came. As the final battle approached, Derek stood on the command bridge of a coalition ship, surrounded by allies, friends, and a fierce determination to protect everything they had fought for. No matter the outcome, Derek said, addressing his fellow commanders, we fight not just for ourselves, but for every species in this galaxy, for every world, every star, and every life that has ever believed in the power of change, the power of adaptation. And as they moved into the unknown, the stars stretched out before them, a testament to the courage, the spirit, and the unwavering will of humanity to face whatever came next. The Wraiths were coming, but humanity would meet them, not with fear, but with the brilliance of a species that would never stop adapting, never stop fighting for the future of the universe.